have, starting from near me, Kirti Bachi, technology evangelist for Translated. Kirti also has a very interesting blog, if you don't know it, Empty Pages. I think you're still active on it, right? Yeah. And then Elena Muniz.
Yes.
Very good. President of the European Association of Machine Translation, of the International Association of Machine Translation, also assistant professor at the Faculty of Arts and Humanities at University of Lisbon, and she works also in product innovation at Unbabel, so lots of heads. Jose Palomares, Director of Localization at Coupa. And also we had lots of expertise from buyer side, vendor side during your lifetime, and Manuel Herranz, CEO of Pangeanic, a real expert in NLP as well. So, welcome.
Thank you very much. So we are going to present 4 views that have a lot in common, but there will be some differences. And we are trying to look into the question, what will it take to get large language models and these GPT technologies into production in real work, in the localization industry. So 2023 was a lot of noise around ChatGPT and many other LLMs, and we heard the phrase game-changing and amazing over and over till the point where we couldn't take it anymore. And there was a lot of buzz around how wonderful it was, and there were not so many examples of how it actually was used by businesses to really build competitive advantage or to really change the way they do what they do. So while there was a lot of noise, there wasn't that much in terms of real results, real production success. Just in the last week or two, we had all assumed that when ChatGPT or any of these large language models do a summarization of a long document for you, that they're reasonably accurate or actually even really very accurate. The truth is they're not. This survey that was done just last week showed that summaries of long documents done by the leading GPT and LLM products in the market is really quite poor. That it's as low as 80% accurate, meaning 80% of it is inaccurate. For GPT-4, the best one was Cloud Opus, which had 58.3%, and you can see their ability in terms of keeping the facts intact is not great. So even where we think that, oh, this looks really good, I have this long document, it summarized it for me, the truth is it's not that good. And the Gartner Group has this technology hype cycle viewpoint that they have on technology that emerges on an ongoing basis. And they had placed generative AI at the peak of the inflated expectations in September of 2023. So basically saying that there's so much overly positive hype around the technology that the likelihood of being deeply disappointed is very high. And so this is the reality for a lot of people who played with the GPT technology or with the local large language model technology. So mostly deflated expectations. Oh, we thought it was really good, but when we tried to put it into motion, into the business, it wasn't that good. We had some success, but not really that much. And some of the other panelists will give you some very specific examples. So at this point, for most people, you are in this disillusionment phase. Yeah, it looks cool, it sounds cool, but it hasn't done anything for me yet, is the reality. So when you look at the enterprise, what does the enterprise expect from technology? The biggest thing they expect is consistency, security, and predictable outcomes. They don't want something that looks really cool for a while but doesn't really work in actual fact. If it doesn't improve business performance, what is the point of it? McKinsey did a study of the challenges that big enterprises have with generative AI. And the last column, the one with the dark blue shaded areas, shows the issues that most big corporations are having. They are having difficulty scaling from pilots to production. So yeah, we all have very cool pilots. Look at this, how nicely this did the MTQE for me. But for me to put it into production would be a really big deal and would change my work process so much that I couldn't do it. There's a lack of general maturity in the product. So for these things to go into production, they have to connect into the existing IT technology that you have. If it doesn't connect properly, if it doesn't connect easily, if it doesn't force you to change the process in a very dramatic way, it won't be useful. It has to be as seamless as possible. There's lots of old technology that is not very friendly to the LLM technology. LLM technology responds best with lots of interactions or with a very properly primed instruction. And these are things that are alien to the translation industry. They are not used to having to give so much instruction for every single task that you expect the machine to do for you. So these are all things that will slow down the adoption. These are problems that can be solved, but they're not problems that can be solved quickly. So we should expect that over the next year or two, people will work on trying to resolve these kinds of problems, and it'll be a while before they are properly resolved to really have a big impact. But there is success. It's not that the AI prototypes don't work. There's lots of areas where LLMs are being used successfully. The biggest and most successful area is customer operations and sales and marketing content creation. There's also a fair amount of success with simple coding applications. So these are the most successful areas that you see, but as you get into more regulated industries of more very precise information transmission that has to happen, it becomes much more iffy. And so, we see some success, and I just saw yesterday that one of the big American banks is now processing like hundreds of thousands of customer queries, first through an LLM-based chatbot before it goes to a human. So when you make the customer problem resolution process more efficient, that's a valuable thing, that's high impact, that makes the business more successful. So we do have some successes with that. So what are the major challenges with large language models? In terms of the language industry, the biggest problem is that it's very English-centric. And you have to ask it to do things through this thing called a prompt. And that prompt is not equal across languages. In some languages, to ask exactly the same thing, and it could be something as simple as, what is the weather in Valencia in the month of April? It could be a question as simple as that, but to ask that question in Burmese would cost you 10 times the prompts. When you use a large language model, the way you build is through the number of tokens you use. And so you can see that some of the biggest languages in the world today, are heavily penalized when you ask questions in that language. And there's also the problem that you don't get results as good as you would with English. So for most people, you still have to go back and use English as your primary interaction with these large language models. So when we look at what other languages could we actually build large language models in, and there are probably 6 others, Arabic, French, Japanese, German, Spanish, and Chinese, that have enough data to build what could be technically called a large language model. As you start going down to other languages that have less data resource, less monolingual data, less bilingual data, it becomes more and more difficult. So the large language model technology is likely to be only available to what are called high resource languages. So this is until we figure out ways to do a lot more with a lot less data, this is going to be the reality that we live with. The other key obstacles that hinder progress is the complexity and the cost of engagement and experimentation. We are seeing new large language models announced every day, and there's all these leaderboards that nobody really understands, and they say, oh yeah, we beat GPT-4, or we beat this, or we beat that. In terms of language translation, what really matters? How many in this room know the answer to that? If you do, raise your hand. John, maybe he knows, but if you don't know how the technology is going to work for the problem you're trying to solve, how could you be successful? So the complexity is a major deterrent to successful deployment. The way to make large language models handle the translation task is through what's called supervised fine-tuning. But that's a lot more sophisticated than putting a bunch of TM into the prompt and saying that, look at this and translate this. This is what most people are doing. It's not effective. And maybe some of you have realized that, but most are still playing at that level. The technical debt that's created by the obsolete localization technology is also a major problem in the adoption. If your data is in translation memory systems that break everything into segments, that force all data to be only aware of tags and the segmentation mindset, it's much harder to properly engage with the large language model, because these large language models tend to do better when you prime them with the right sort of information up front. Then the results you get are going to be much more specifically accurate to what you want it to do. And this is a very serious issue for the language industry to resolve. Like, how do we keep data in a format that is friendly to the new AI technology that's coming out? And we should be aware that translation memory technology and the string matching technology that we have today is over 30 years old. There are better ways to keep textual databases. And the biggest reason probably is that to do this well requires deep expertise. The expertise for this is now so high-priced that all the big companies are hunting down all the best students in all the best universities around the world. So you will be competing for second, third, fourth tier people who have some understanding of the technology but may not really have the same competence as the big companies have. So one quick example I can give you on the state of LLM as an MT tool. We all have wonderful examples of, yes, it did a great job on that sentence, but systematic studies done by machine translation experts show that as of December, this is WMT results from December 2023, that yes, they are sometimes as good as neural machine translation engines, but they still have significant semantic mistranslation issues. And while they understand the document context better, there are still very serious issues that need to be resolved. This was the most current official and expert evaluation done, where they showed that it was equal to the best Chinese and the best Japanese and the best Czech system, the neural machine system. So there are examples where with a 5-shot approach, you were able to reach the neural machine translation capabilities. But also we should remember, they tend to do best into languages going into English. Because of their English bias, they tend to do best going that way. The very serious issue for everyone trying to deploy large language models in production is that they're significantly slower than traditional neural machine translation models. So when I say significantly, we have to use a log scale to be able to even show this, is that they're 100 times slower. They're not like 5 times, 10 times slower, they're 100 times slower. And this is this is something that means you can't use it in any kind of high volume automated translation setting, like chat, like any very active like social media kind of setting. You can use it in production settings where the data flow is much slower, but in any high volume setting, it will be very challenging to do that. This is an estimate made by Common Sense Advisory on what it would cost just to translate, something large like the English Wikipedia, and they show that the costs are actually much higher with the best LLM technology. So the cost picture is also something that we have to understand better, because the cost varies by the kind of prompt you have, it varies by the language you use in the source, and so it is not a well understood issue. We still need more information to understand, and you can't put a technology into production when you don't understand the cost clearly. The other issue is that the latency is significantly slower. As I said, it's 40 to 100 times slower. But there are reasons for optimism. At Translated, we have been building large language model-based MT, and we have seen significantly better results than the best NMT systems that we have seen. So for big languages, we're seeing, significantly improved scores and on human assessments too. We also see that language variants can be handled much more easily with a large language model. So you could take a German text and say, give me the translation in Australian English or British English or even Indian English. So the ability for the large language model to model variants is much more natural. It does this very well. There are people that are showing products here and their announcements in the industry of success with MTQE kinds of applications, or just any significant language quality assessment kind of application, or even some automated post-editing applications. So I think in the near-term future, what we're going to see is that NMT is still the best tool for high volume, low latency kinds of and wide language coverage work. But LLMs might be better for when you really care about quality as quickly as possible. You want to reduce the human element in there to the minimum possible. So an example would be you run 1 million sentences through neural machine translation, then you take the lowest quality, so you have the large language model also, or you have an MTQE phase in there, identify the lowest quality segments, and then use the large language model to correct that, to further reduce it so that the human work needed is less. So again, see, this is a high volume text application. It makes sense in those kinds of settings. And the net result will be you have better output at scale. And this is another example where you could do multiple languages at the same time. And again, the large language model helps in the refinement and improvement phase. So it automates some of the human work. And the human work, we know, is the most expensive part of the large-scale translation process. So it's useful there. And we're beginning to say that we can actually see that we're at the beginning of this, what Gartner calls the slope of enlightenment, where you can begin to see real potential production value, where you begin to see that it is successful and that in the near term or in the 12 to 15-month time horizon, we can put these systems into production. So I think it's going to be, we still need to learn how to do the adaptation more successfully on a continuous basis, not just occasionally. And the latency needs to improve. So this is where a lot of the research is going on with the most skilled people in the translation industry. And this is just what McKinsey says about what will it take. And it's really about finding the right kinds of applications, upskilling your teams. So they need to understand how these things work. If you have people who have been living in CAT tools and TMS systems all their lives, their likelihood of success is not high. We need better connections between Gen AI technology and IT infrastructure where the content lives. Because at the end of the day, it's really about making the business more efficient and more successful. And those are my comments right there.
Yeah. Hi, everyone. I bring you... Very nice landscape by Kirti. I bring you a different vision. I'm a teacher of translators, the ones that we've been talking about all these days. They will lose their jobs and so on. I try to be optimistic and tell them, you're not losing your job. You need to revamp completely your skills. And I bring you in line with the optimism. I think I'm in that curve that Gartner is showing. So I keep my translators happy as well. And I'm also bringing a perspective of working with the product innovation at Mbeba. And we're working in pilots, and also one of these products is already being in a very advanced stage. We heard the expression hyper-localization. We heard hyper-personalization. We heard hyper-things. And we heard a lot the expression going beyond translation. And it's basically it. A translator is no longer a translator, is a language specialist that has new skills and need to apply those new skills. And where can it be applied? Where? In a different mindset, basically in cultural transcreation products, where you need to adapt to the culture, specific culture of that region. And this is quite different. For instance, I'm Azorian, and my culture is completely different from the mainland in Portugal. And I want to have my voice, my tone, my culture. Another one is on quality assessment with explanations. This is a pilot study. And this can be even applied to high-risk content like legal or medical domain. And this is based on leveraging all the quality metrics that Mbeba has been developing, also manual and automatic metrics. Another one is, it's very hard these days sometimes to differentiate. I was having this discussion at lunch with Laura to differentiate between translators and subject matter experts. And usually what you have is translators, then subject matter experts. I think it's time to revert things. I think it's time to give subject matter experts their place. They know the terms. They know everything in that field. They couldn't care less more about translation. So let's put the people with the right skills in the right place in the pipelines. And we're doing all the systematic things, and we need to change. And what is a subject matter expert when you can have co-pilots like we saw with Jennifer Wong this morning? Also, another one is you need to assess these people. And you need to create valid tests. And generative AI can be very productive. To my surprise, we conducted several tests. And generative AI prompting with linguists and translators that are trained to use prompt engineering are able to create tests as good as human evaluations with 95% of accuracy. Another one that is very challenging is brain communication. This is not a utopia anymore. This is getting signals from our brain and really doing communication with locked-in patients. This is a project in process. And so we're talking about LLMs and machine translation. There's people everywhere doing their own LLMs these days. There's projects in Europe. You can even get quotas from supercomputing centers like the Barcelona Supercomputing Center. And that's how Unbabel got to get the Tower LLM, getting supercomputing power from Barcelona with all the data created from 2013 and get a lot of data and creating its own Tower LLM. It also shows that this is not good, as Kirti was saying, to all the languages. This is not good for all the domains. So we need to have assessment and processes in place to know which domain, which language it will be feasible. And right now, I believe we are in a hybrid time, but this hybrid time maybe is not very long, in my opinion, if we scale up the processes and if we disrupt our own mentality that this is no longer a time for cut tools or just empty systems. And this is not only on the translator side, this is on all our minds. We used to think the problem is in the translator side. They're quite disruptive when they want. And they can do co-piloting very, very well, let me tell you. Very proud of some of my students. So what is the path for production? We need to improve the ways we're assessing. Manual assessment is very valid, but we need to improve that. And we need to find ways of on-the-fly assessing what we're doing, and this is a huge challenge. I don't have a miracle nor a recipe for this, but we're trying several angles to tackle that. And it needs to provide trust. Clients need trust in this. They need to trust that the quality is there. So it's a big, big problem. One thing that is very close to my heart is training the next generation of language specialists. And my first class is about how you become a translator and now you're a language specialist. And from a concrete example, I teach 24 lessons in a course called Machine Translation that needs a new name also. And the 24 lessons were condensed in 3 now. All the remaining ones are new things we need to do. So universities are adapting, maybe not as fast as you want, but there's also a need for a virtuous cycle between universities and in industries, and this needs to continue. So universities receive your challenges and can also answer it back. And this is a big, big challenge. And if we continue the message that translators will know we don't have work, we're just not seeing the potential of people who really know about language, who have explicit knowledge about language and culture, being involved in a product that is language. All what we sell is language and culture. And just would like to finish. So there's a balance we need to create in these things. Manuel was in a panel on ethics, and we've been working hard on responsible AI and in projects on responsible AI and how to bring responsible AI to products that you don't see ethics as a thing that is not profitable. The idea is your products need to be responsible. Otherwise, they're not creating trust. And if you're not creating trust, you won't gain any money with that, for sure. So it's not a question of ethics versus product, it's a question of ethics being embedded in the product. And how we do this, with a lot of things, I'll be fast, we need to create awareness, literacy amongst us. And us is a big community. As president of the European Association, it's very clear that it's not only the problem on users, translators, industry, or researchers. This needs to be a cooperation and effort. And there's also the need to create ethics training, awareness. What is the values I'm embedding in this product? What are the demographics? What are the users being involved in this? And we also need to create best practices. They are not only on a training course, but they are in the daily life of the products. And discuss the risks in an honest way, anticipate the risks, and be honest and say, I didn't anticipate this, and I probably need to discuss and delve more into that. Jose, that's your turn.
So I'm gonna play the role of the person with imposter syndrome. So because I find myself like a sandwich in between the experts, and this is a total metaphor of what my professional life looks like. So just being surrounded by people that know a lot better what they're doing, and then like holding a bag of money, and just saying, what do I do with it? what is going to work? So I haven't contributed the slides in the capacity that my colleagues have, so I apologize for that. You're going to have to just listen to me for the most part. Hopefully something is valuable. But I want to just say that I represent the corporate side on this equation. So people who have like great expectations, and that's me. Just don't mind the misspelling. And I'm not changed my name. I'm still, yeah. It's in Valencian. That's how you pronounce it in Valencian. So it's so I represent I have a lot of needs in the organization, and I am no expert. So I find myself depending on people like those around me today to really tell me what I can do and what I cannot do. So you can picture me. The way that I like to position this is the position where I think I need to be, and many like me need to be, is when you think about like that curve and the chasm of the solution, I think that I like to stay at the top of it, at the apex of it, with a roller skate, just ready to jump really fast down and just get out of it, but just waiting and seeing how other people are actually jumping and getting this solution. I'm not disillusioned, but I make a constant decision to wait and see what works, and then move fast once that models are mature. So that is, when we were talking about this session originally, which was back in October or something like that, we thought we were going to talk about like all the obstacles that we found along the way in getting to production. At this day, it's all the obstacles that still stand in our way taking things to production. So we're only at a partial success and only at a partial failure in taking it. And again, I hope that I can represent a little bit that posture of this is where I am in the middle. So Coupa, the company that I work for, is an AI company. So I have a dichotomy of like how well AI is working. As an organization, our products seem to be mature and working, and AI is foundational for us. So there is a lot of knowledge that also has driven a lot of expectations on what it is that we do as an organization. So in what parts of the organization is something like generative AI working? It's working in places like for content writers to an extent. We can use AI in departments like marketing or documentation to create drafts and play with voices and personas. We can define a persona and we can produce 2,000 pages of content and produce 5 versions for different personas of that documentation. Before, that wasn't an option. We couldn't do that at a scale. We would just have to choose a persona. And in some cases, if you're like an advanced technical writing department, you might have like some conditional text. If the persona is this one, show this information, additional or replacement or deletion. Now we can have like full versions, which also allows us to like test what is going to work in the future. We can maintain a much bigger data set of content or corpora, I wanted to say, and see what sticks and what doesn't. So we can run those transformations. Does it mean that everything that we produce is ready to go into production? No. There is a lot of like manual steps. There's a lot of like human in the loop. We create, like I said, drafts. Those drafts, they still need to be checked. In some cases, we're like using AI to check the drafts and ask a number of questions and say, do these versions of this content match the these and these key factors about these personas. And then we get to a yes or no. If it's yes, someone might decide to move it to a final review step. Otherwise, it needs more work and gets pushed back. All of that is still lacking the orchestration of it. We don't have tools that allow us to do this at a scale. When I say 2,000 pages, that is a real scenario that we have. Do we have a platform that we have built that manages all this back and forth of like, I create copy, I create source content, and then I create versions, and I submit them to an exponential number of workflows, to an exponential number of people in the company to have an opinion? All of that is only conceptual and being developed slowly but surely. So that's why, am I in the disillusionment? No, I want everyone to drop there, get back up, and then I'll catch up with you once that those platforms exist. For now, we're just using it to the extent where it works, and it accelerates the work. So that is one example. I think that product development is the clear one. That is where it's working. We're able to look at our own data and let users ask questions about the data that they have about us. So the data that they have with us is how much money I'm spending on X in my organization, who is in a 200,000 people organization, who is spending money on what are the outliers, what do I need to care for, how many payments are being made late, what is like happening in AP, in accounts payable or in accounts receivable, whatever it is, you can interrogate. Interrogate is a word that we use internally. It's not pretty to say it to the user that you are like interrogating anyone, but that is what you're doing with your data. Does that work? Can we use generative AI to that extent? Yes, but we can do it, but we had to build a framework that actually restrains those answers. So we don't let you ask just any question, and we will do someone mentioned the yes and of AI. We're not just gonna give you information because there is an engine there. That engine is limited. It will only give you certain types of answers, because the risk of telling you something that is not right, it's too big for us to have like an open platform. So I think that there is also something that we're seeing in other places. It's like, yes, you use it. Yes, it creates some really nice speaking companion, but it's limited in what information it can actually give you. Without that, we would probably be out of business very quickly. Think about that. Think about like making a bad decision about like moving your budget when a bank collapses and you need to move it somewhere else, and you say, what are my options? And it gives you the wrong answer. So for a lot of things, we say, no, we cannot do it. Then cross-team has become a productivity tool. Is every person under the sun has access to our private instance of AI. Again, it is a ChatGPT Enterprise 3.5 based, with some guardrails that we've built around to make sure that people are using it in the way that we want, and that certain things don't go into the system. So there is actually a filtering mechanism that I'm surprised I'm not hearing from more people. But data security, it is a big thing. And data security involves, you cannot just have anyone in the company ask anything and provide anything to anyone. I know that it sounds like very generic, but it's really, those are the wild cards. Anything is always bad. Any is always bad. So we filter what people can get out of that system, and we don't go into a 4 version to much chagrin of my colleagues. My colleagues are really hoping for that to be updated so that we can do more manipulations and things that we are currently depending on partners to do. That's the fun thing. It's like, are we being stopped from running all sorts of experiments and trying out things? No, but we cannot do it in-house. We need to go to these people to go and try things. But internally, the only reason why we're not on 4 is because it would be exponentially more expensive. So the one model, when we talk about like how much cheaper or more expensive than MT, for instance, is we could potentially open up like our 3.5 and have anyone like doing translations. Spoiler alert, some people are doing it. We haven't like limited that. We haven't gone to our team and say, no, prevent people from getting translations. Why? Because we don't have a better solution that is scalable. We don't have a mechanism to give you a fully trained 4.x ChatGPT equivalent with Coupa data that will be then the ideal case. Do we want people to not use it and instead go to Google Translate? No. I would rather have them using our ChatGPT 3.5 to the extent of their heart's desires than rather have them like going to Google Translate. Because why? Because they're putting all sorts of stuff in there. Sometimes there's customer information. It should never get out. By giving them a next best alternative that is secure, even though limiting and paralyzing to an extent to some of us, it is a safe environment. We are in better shape. Is that going to hold? Is that going to be something that we can do next year and that is going to be enough? Definitely, it will not. And then there is localization. Localization is usually as a specialty. We're taking what we like about AI and using it, and we're ditching everything else. So the question that everybody asks is like, do you do translation through AI? The answer is an absolute no. We do a lot of like neural machine translation, adaptive machine translation at that, and we come to like it a lot because it's scalable, it is fast, it's easy to predict, which means a great deal to us. So uncertainty at the localization function in an organization like ours, like mine, it is bad. It's one bad decision could really throw things out the window, and I cannot afford to do that, and I will not do that. And I would rather be 2 years behind all of you than put my organization at a situation where we fail. So might I be right, might I be wrong? That's why I talk to the experts, and every now and then someone like, puts me in the head. It's like, hey, wake up, you're falling behind. But I feel really comfortable with that. So we're doing extensive use for multimedia creation. That is a tested, you've heard it from so many people. It's a tested place. You should be doing it. If you have like plenty of multimedia content, you should be looking into how to leverage those tools. We definitely are. It's become one of our banners at the organization. We can do that at a scale, which is the holy grail for us, at a scale. Doing things ad hoc or for one project or for one initiative as an experiment, that's something that we like. But doing something at a scale, we are never in any other area of what localization does at the same level where we are like with multimedia. With multimedia, we're confident that we can produce the results at the level that we expect. And then again, we use it for trying to empower translators, anyone who's working in our tooling. We have the limitation, we cannot open it up internally, but we cannot connect our translators to our own Coupa instance because again, security. This is like, even though they're like close partners, even though we only have like 2 levels of subcontracting, we're not in a position to convince an organization that handles financial data to tell us like, yeah, let me open this thing to just translators. It sounds diminishing. I'm sorry. That is how security take it. So we would like to do that. We do it through our partners, and we do it through our TMS technology, for instance. We let them use the tools that they have, but there is a gap. We have, in some cases, for instance, like some uses in which there is an LLM layer on top of machine translation for, spell checking or for correction or for voice tuning, and we're not able to open that up to our whole ecosystem. So that is the future for us, being able to develop more things, more sophistication internally, and then get over the hurdles of enterprise security to actually open it up to everyone who works with us, which is a known group of people in our case. It's not that we are going to be opening it to the world. Again, we know the name of our translators. We know first name, last name. They're not part of the organization, but they're within arm's reach. So that is a little bit what we're doing and what we've managed to do. I think that I covered the things that are on the slide. There is a lot of frustration from teams all over that this is not perfect. Oh, you didn't get the pictures?
No, these were your frustrations, right?
Okay, so more frustrations. So I had a couple of pictures that I wanted to call out because people say, well, you could be doing more. And I had like one case, for instance, I use the data that I see in the world. I see Goldman Sachs going out and saying, we've been running so many experiments and we don't have anything in production. I think that happened last October or in the winter or the fall. So a company as big, throwing literally hundreds of millions into it, not being able to reach a state of confidence, that I take that information and use it internally. I want to identify with that. Maybe they're wrong, maybe they're just giving up, I don't care. It's significant enough for me to not take similar risks. And the other one that I had that I wanted to show you is, in February, I don't know if everybody saw it, but there was an episode of like ChatGPT going through a hard time. I was talking to Konstantin about this. It's like they have ChatGPT, OpenAI has the means to prevent this from happening, but yet it did happen. And they can fix it quickly. But for a number of hours while they were investigating, ChatGPT was doing things like spitting out responses in half English and half Spanish, even if you had nothing to do with Spanish. You were just like asking it questions, and it looked like, you know, like a drunk Spaniard, like up to here with agua de Valencia. So it looked like that, and I had a picture of like some of the responses for that. They're just like, imagine if I'm using that in our product, a technology like that, and it gets in front of a customer. Of course, ChatGPT, I had a great conversation with Konstantin from Intento last night, where he said, well, they have the way to recover from that and fix it very quickly. And I said, I don't. When I'm putting information in front of customers on the product, I can revert. We can fix the product. But for something like user-generated content, we haven't built mechanisms to recover from errors. When it happens, it goes into a TMS and a process of republishing. But we don't have a disaster recovery plan for when we mess up big time with customer data or by putting the wrong thing in front of people. So if someone is using GPT at a scale from OpenAI through Coupa, for instance, and we give them like 4 hours of garbage, the damage of that is my biggest slip, I would say, like complete dismissal, get out of the door, sorry, someone needs to pay for this, and you're gonna be in the news. That is really what would happen. It's unlikely, yes. If it happens, no. Will I wait? That's what we do. We're gonna wait until that is out of the picture, and someone made that mistake before. We laugh at them, then we said, we're sorry it happened to you. Glad it didn't happen to me. And we see that success case, and then we go into production, like, you know, head first. So that was me.
Okay, so
You have no time.
yeah, but that's why you're probably tired of me because this is the third session I talk to, so I'm not going to say the same things. If you only knew where I would talk about it. But don't go. The best is to come. So there are some things I wholeheartedly agree with Gertie. Some I don't. Pangianic takes MT, considers MT as a full NLP problem, not just a language transfer problem. So we look at the picture from a very general NLP, and we have other NLP products that are monolingual, which gives us more perhaps an engineering mindset to look at language issues. So next slide, please. I'm going to click here. So to illustrate that, NLP, or machine translation, is just one branch. So machine translation is just one branch of a larger science called natural language processes, which in turn is part of artificial intelligence, which is many things. And sometimes I hear people talk about AI and LLMs and MT, and I'm confused. I'm confused because I don't know exactly what they are talking about. But anyway, to cut a long story short, next slide. This was ChatGPT, or large language models 120 years ago, and people were being educated about where the future is going to be in packets of cigarettes. Okay, so in year 2000, children in France will not need to read because books will be massaged and concentrated, condensed into knowledge that will be pumped through their ears. So the idea was there a long time ago. ChatGPT was not, large language models have been around for a long time. Anybody that played with the Da Vinci knows the limitations. They were a pain. They were a pain to deal with. The big difference came when we included a chatbot into the data. So now you were talking to data. And what can you do with LLMs that you can chat to? Well, chat. They're not specifically designed to translate. They can. That is a subproduct. They can do many other things, but they're not really designed for. I had a session, and some of you were there, with Efe, and the session was called Using LLMs for Things They Were Not Designed for. So I talked how we did things for EFE to avoid one mistake, one word, one complaint by a Brazilian journalist in 111 million words that had been translated and of which we had no feedback. So positive. Now, because of that one word that a Brazilian journalist did not like, we included EFE in our LLM journey. Now, Babel is doing great things with fine-tuning LLMs. There is supervised fine-tuning. There are a number of LoRa. We can experiment with LoRa. It's wonderful. It allows you to inject knowledge and data at, you probably know this is the way you did it at Babel, inject a lot of data at a fraction of the cost. So you can have an LLM that specializes in specializes in translation at a fraction of the cost. And it's not so expensive to retrain it. But that is just one thing. I mean, just like it happened with Moses or OpenMT, that were indeed open source software, there is a black box that you use to do one thing: input, decode, decode, encode, decode, encode, decode. It's what you build around it, the experience around it, that provides a solution. The LLM itself is not going to provide. If you think that ChatGPT is going to provide you a solution for automated post-editing, no. It's not even interesting to OpenAI to provide a solution for automated post-editing or for name entity recognition or for MTQE. Surely it's not. Next slide. You've seen enough of children. Okay, good, yeah. Okay. So, the same guy, there was such a visionary and looked at how children would not read in the year 2000 because knowledge would be condensed. And that is the point. I mean, LLMs, what they're really good at is condensing knowledge. So we don't use our brains recalling data. It might be very... Okay, I had an embarrassing situation some years ago in Shanghai when I thought the river that crosses Shanghai is the Yellow River. And the Chinese people looked at me and said, no, you don't know the river that crosses our city? I can't remember the name of the river, I'm sorry. Okay, but that's our brain working in a recall function. Data in, then we spit it out, we recall it when we need it. I don't know what river crosses Shanghai. Okay, but how does that affect my business, day life, my interaction with people? Well, unless I'm in Shanghai with Chinese people and I'm making a fool of myself, nothing. So LLMs are very good as repository of knowledge, multilingual knowledge repositories that you can recall. Okay, and they're designed to generate, not to translate. In fact, our biggest challenge at Pangeanic is reducing generative tendencies and the tendency to please the user. Okay, so be concrete. I can't give away all the secrets and the pre-prompting and engineering, but there is a lot of pre-prompting, and on there, don't, please, stick to your task, be concrete, don't engage in conversations. And in fact, one of them, take a deep breath. I can give that away. Okay. Our pre-prompt of our custom LLM has take a deep breath. We make it slow on purpose, so it checks the result. We don't have the power, okay, we don't have 50 servers running around, but we are able to run one decent Mixtral 87B custom model from single server, and it's not a very expensive one, by the way. So what I'm trying to get at with this image is that the same person that was such a visionary and thought, well, in the future this will happen, could not foresee the ripples of other technologies creeping in his mindset. What am I trying to say here? The latest technologies, the latest advances by mankind, in those days were skyscrapers and flying machines. Okay, so looking at the present, I guess that in the future, people will deliver messages to skyscrapers using flying machines. So the postman will fly with letters in their hands to deliver Jose a message. Jose, I want to have a beer with you tonight.
That's how I gave them mail.
Okay. no concept out of the box that there would not be paper communications, there would be electricity-based communications. That's what's actually happened to this industry. We've been locked in a segment mentality. Elena was pointing, we've been locked in a translation memory mentality. That was not how machine translation came about in early days. In the 50s, first experiments, well, early 40s if you want. With machine translation, the point was to translate documents. And there are videos about it. In 3 years' time, in 4 years' time, we'll know everything that the Russians are writing and talking about. That was 1956. Okay, that died a death, and then several decades later, segment-based technologies come about, which are good because they were good at the time. I don't think they're any good. Because the mentality at the time was organize everything in a data set. Okay? Don't rely on WordPerfect's F4, and anybody that's been a translator long enough knows what I'm talking about. F4 was your translation memory. You copied and you pasted with F4 in WordPerfect. So it was a way of organizing in a database language, but it's a very inefficient way. We humans do not speak in segments, and that is why we're so attracted to LLMs and chat technologies. We chat. Give us an answer. Might be the wrong. It doesn't matter. I could give you the wrong answer today about something. I gave the wrong answer about what river crosses Shanghai. It's not the Yellow River. Doesn't matter. But it was naturally flowing language, and that's why we trust them. And that's why everybody in this room, the majority of people in this industry, is bent about using LLMs for automatic post-editing, in which Translator is working on, and very well, and RWS, I saw a really good video in Tokyo, lab prototype, and Babel is working on still lab prototype, and Gianni has a video, lab prototype. It works well in certain scenarios for certain people in something that you control. Works well with EFE, 1,000 journalists use it every day, but we control the environment. Okay? Outside that environment, maybe it doesn't work so well, and it's not exactly what that client might expect.